Good morning, everyone. We cannot be nourished unless we are prepared. We cannot be nourished unless we are prepared. The Scriptures unfold that for us. These last couple of weeks kind of create a segue to it. 2 weeks ago we heard that Jesus went out and he multiplied the loaves. It was a prefigurement of the Eucharist. He fed them, and it was this beautiful action of providing. And it reminded us of the reality that he feeds us by making present the greatest act of love that humanity would ever know. See, you and I are fed in our humanity. We are fed when somebody who loves us shows us that love. When they make a sacrifice for us. We're fed, we're encouraged. God does that right here. We said, "Feed me, Seymour. Feed me." We want to be fed, and that's one of the things that substantially happens here, is just in making present that piece of wood that's shaped into a man's frame and put on a cross. It's a very beautiful symbol. But that reality is made present here. The very act when Jesus said, I lay down my life for you. I die. I pour myself out. My blood, I pour it out for you. I mean, think about that. Think about the most sacrificial act that somebody has ever done for you. Beautiful act of love, I'm sure, personally. But nothing comes close to that. And he did it for you and me. And that reality is made present at the Mass. But we have to know that. And we have to see it with the eyes of faith. Remember Father and Uncle John? This is my body. Beautiful capacity to know and to see God. That's faith. And to recognize Him in the Eucharist. Our kids know it. It's covenant. You hear it when the blood is being blessed. This is my blood, the blood of the new and eternal covenant. A covenant is a total gift of self. He gives himself completely to us. Later on in the Eucharistic prayer, you hear oblation. Pouring himself out. That is made present. And we're encouraged. We're encouraged when, that is the supreme. It could be the mundane among us. Who among us isn't encouraged when somebody takes out the trash? For goodness sakes, thank you for taking out the trash. Thank you for mowing the lawn, and not even saying, well, who's going to do it this time? You just go out and do it. Stop by and get the groceries when you know it has to be done. All these different things, even an encouraging word. When we have those acts of service, it feeds us in our humanity. And Jesus has provided this par excellence, a manifestation of the greatest act of love that humanity knows, and he's done that for you and me. So he feeds us with his covenant and his total pouring out of self. Okay. Then last week, we heard from Jesus and saying, all the crowds followed him. He said, "No, you're just coming because I fed you with food, with bread and fish. Hunger for that which is eternal." And we recognized last week that he makes himself manifest in this act of love, but then he comes down and he actually embraces us. Every single one here. Why do you go to Mass? Why can't you just say the rosary? Or why can't you just pray at home? Why do you go to Mass? And the little kid is asking that, "Mommy, why do we have to go to Mass?" Yours is not to question why. Yours is but to do it. No, that was my grandfather who would say that. We don't need that. What we need to say to the children, to ourselves, to anyone who's asking the question, we come to Mass to be embraced by God. He makes himself manifest here. The eternal comes into the temporal. And we come to Mass to be embraced by God. Now that segues into today. He says, I am the bread of life. He who eats this bread and drinks my blood will live forever. That's a nourishment. So he wants us to be nourished. It's an embrace that nourishes. We're being fed by the very act of love that is made present. But you can't be nourished unless you are prepared. Well, what are we talking about there? Well, for one thing, you can't be nourished unless you're at the table. You can't be fed from the table unless you're there. Now, we do have those who are sick, whether it's hospitals or maybe they're in a nursing home or maybe they're at home. And then you use this and you say, we need the Eucharist, Father, or you call the office. And our extraordinary ministers, and we have so many of them, and especially like in the COVID situation that they stepped up and they did a beautiful job. They loved going. If somebody needs Holy Communion, call and ask. We'll send either extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, the Deacon Vince does a tremendous job there. Father Tony and I will come, especially if they're asking for confession. Okay, but you can't be nourished from the table unless you're at the table. So that's the first step. The second step is to be prepared. See, because the reality is you can come up and you can receive, and again, it looks like bread, smells like bread, tastes like bread. It'll nourish the body. The accidents of the substance or the accidents of the bread remain, so it'll nourish your body, just like bread will. But it's meant to give us life, not only in this world, but in the next. It's meant to nourish the entire person, body and soul. The problem is that if we're not prepared, it doesn't. You can receive, but it won't nourish. We have to be prepared. Okay, is there a grave sin that we've committed? We knew it was a grave sin, and we had full possession of our will. If that's happened, that's a mortal sin. And we need to go and we need to talk about it to God in the sacrament of reconciliation and penance. And you say, well, I don't know if I really buy that. This sounds like some theological jargon and kind of a construct that somebody put in place. The reality is that the eternal Son, the second person of the Trinity, assumed a human nature so that he could speak our language and tell us who God is and who we are, and revealed to us the way in which he comes to us substantially in the sacraments. And it is analogous. You be the judge. I'm in college, dating a girl, I forget something that's very significant to her, and I don't really address the situation. I just go out and get some flowers and some chocolates, and then I give them to her, and I just start acting like everything is okay. Is that okay, ladies? No. Okay. They're like, no. No, it's not. Why isn't it okay? It's not okay because something has happened that now is getting in the way, even if I'm doing something, some beautiful act of love and sacrifice, there's no communion or connection there. Why? Because we haven't talked about it. We haven't reconciled. It's the same thing with the embrace. I mean, I come up, I receive Holy Communion. Yeah, I mean, you can... I can't remember if I think I did go in for the hug. She gave me the side hug. No, don't really want to talk to you right now. Some people will just hug you, and they'll still, but there's no connection there. No connection with the hug. And you know what? If we're honest with ourselves, we know. We know when somebody is really watching what we do, an act of love or service, and they're appreciating it. We know when we embrace somebody that they are embracing us back and that there's a connection. There's a true, substantial, human nourishment in that. You see the analogy? It's a relevant analogy. Okay? This is what God is doing for us. He wants us to know how much we're loved and that is manifest here. He wants us to come forward to receive an embrace from eternal, and He wants that embrace to nourish us, lift us, sustain us for the week. I think the two probably most common grave sins that people do, and they know that it's grave: missing Mass on the weekends and taking the Lord's name in vain. There are a bunch of others, but I'll just say those two. I mean, really, taking the Lord's name in vain, I'm just going to be honest with you. If you do in front of me, I don't care if you're a child or if you're my elder, I will correct you. And you need to be corrected. It's not that difficult to stop taking the Lord's name in vain. He's brought us into being. Be honorable. And if you do it, go to confession. Missing Mass, it's just a hoop to jump through. You know what? If you grew up, you don't have to raise your hand. Anybody grow up in a matriarchal or patriarchal household where there was a bunch of you, whether it was cousins or it was brothers and sisters, and everybody meets at their house on Sunday? You got to be there. And why do you have to be there? You have to be there because, first of all, they want to see that face. Second of all, they want to feed you. Third of all, they want to give you an embrace. And then fourth, they want to look into your face, maybe not every single time, but right there, and they want to say, you remember who you are. You're my son. You're my daughter. You remember what you were brought up in. You remember the integrity that's there. You make mistakes, you say you're sorry. You admit that you're wrong. You take possession of yourself. You move forward. You remember you're a Shulkins. You're a Stipe. You're a Buck. Okay? That's what it's supposed to be. He wants us to be fed by the very acts that He makes manifest. He wants us to be embraced. And He wants that embrace to truly nourish us. But we can't be nourished unless we are prepared.